Well, hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I am Piper Harris with Poema Women's Success Coaching, and you can see we have a couple people on screen today. We have Miss Mitch. Say hello, Mitch. She is a good friend and colleague of mine, and we've been blessed that Jody has joined us as well, and he's also a coach colleague of mine. So this is great. So today I do want to let you know that we're going to be digging in on the conversation of toughness. And before we do that, I want to do a little introduction if you don't know me. Like I said, I'm the coach and CEO for Poema Women's Success. I have been in the field of people development for about 20 years as either a counselor, a mental health counselor, a coach, a business owner, anything and everything under the sun, and work with people on empowering them in their leadership, however that looks in their life. Mitch is joining us. She is the founder and CEO of Sav Hill Consulting. She's also a certified professional coach as well. She's part of the National Speakers Association. She's extremely passionate, and she has got a heart for the arts as well, which we all love about her. She and I linked arms at a board that we were together on, and so I'm really thrilled to have her taking part in this discussion today. So welcome, Mitch.
Thank you.
Today, just wanted to let everybody know how this Lunch and Learn series is going to work. This is through my Caring Through COVID. Okay, so you can follow that hashtag anywhere, Caring Through COVID. See all the things I'm putting on. So today we're doing this via Zoom. It might be about an hour. It's going to be a great dialogue on toughness. We'll take Q&A. And if you're not familiar with using Zoom, I think you're pretty familiar with it. Jody, open up the chat box, or if you have any questions, anything like that. So who's ready to get going?
Let's get ready to rumble.
Let's get it. All right. So today, like I said, we are discussing toughness, especially in the light of, what's going on in our world with COVID. And a lot of us are having to dig deep down. Before we started recording the session, we were talking about, we're seeing a lot of different people during this time and facing toughness, or how they're facing what they're facing. So today we just want to kind of dig into that. So I'd love to continue that conversation. The types of people that we're seeing right now in the midst of COVID. We're seeing those that are leaning into being tough, being innovative, helping others. We're seeing people that are hiding, or we're seeing people that are it's fine. We're going to be fine. So when you think about that, where do you guys land? Toughness, or are you feeling stuck within this trial of the COVID crisis?
Well, I have found ways to be creative, and as a creative, that's how I cope. But as a coach, I am coaching several of my clients through toughness. And the first point of toughness was even requesting to work from home when they had real physical health issues that would have put them at risk. Even as Americans, I think especially we're so in that mindset of, if I ask for something, I'm going to be looked down as a, needy.
Yeah.
And they didn't even want to ask for, eventually, thankfully that the companies sent their workers to go work from home. But just even that, just like in this time, coaching them to be tough, to say, this is what I need, or to take care of themselves. Sometimes we're just not caring for ourselves the way that we should. So right. I'm seeing that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Jody? What are you seeing, or what are you feeling in terms of like toughness?
So just a personal example, I have a son who started a job in Tucson, Arizona, graduated from college last May. And so it's a new job. He's at the University of Arizona and working in their development department. And they gave him a laptop to work from his apartment. But he has a girlfriend in California, and he called me because she said, I'm going home. I'm going to Sacramento. You're invited. You can come. You can be there with my family. You won't be alone, and you can work remotely. And to the college's credit, he called me saying, should I just go? What do I do? And I said, I trying to coach him through it, but I asked him, what's important for you? And he was anxious because he was feeling pressure from his girlfriend and internal pressure to want to go, but also the university at that point had not cleared people to just leave or, leave the state, for example, and not be available to come in when they need them. So I said, well, what about requesting? And I think there's a real power in making a request.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, send the email, tell them what's up and make the request and see what happens. And then, it all worked out for him. So he is there in Sacramento now, safe. But I think we need to be willing to make requests that affect our lives, our family, and not be afraid of repercussions from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love especially that point, not being afraid of that, because it sounds like, Mitch, you're hearing that from your clients too. Like, well, making these requests, how am I going to be seen if I'm making these requests? So let me ask you both, how would you define toughness? Let's talk about our own personal definitions of toughness, kind of what we're talking about, what we're seeing with people in our lives. But how would you define your own personal toughness?
Well, I would say a personal example is even when somebody very close to me was getting a little bit too down in the mud and stressing about things that you can't control. And it was that point where I kind of was watching it unravel until I said, okay, you're going to have to be tough and you're going to have to say, that's it. Like, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Knock it off. Like, you cannot control that. You can only control what you can control. You can only control in your sphere of influence, what is in that sphere of influence. But stepping out, being able to not be afraid to offend and say, chill out. And I think some people need to be told, you need to chill out. And so, that toughness, and it's also a point of view of saying, okay, so if everything went to the trash and if I lost my job, if we, couldn't pay our rent, like, okay, well, what would I do? I'm always have a backup plan to the backup plan kind of person. So I'm like, okay, worst case scenario. Okay, well, how would I resolve that? But always thinking of the solution to possible problems. What can I control is what I use as the, how to remain tough. It's like, what can I control? Mm-hmm. And that's what I focus on.
So you're saying for your version of toughness is you focus on the here and now, what can I absolutely control, and the rest of it I set aside. So this is how you define your toughness and moving through.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. What about you, Jody?
Yeah, I see toughness and resilience kind of in the same light, or
absolutely.
And I love there's a time to take a stand for yourself and for your family and for what, as Mitch was saying, what you can control in this moment. And I think there's a real need for us all to be more present to the current moment. Mm-hmm. We can't know what's going to happen in a week, even hours from now. Things are changing so rapidly, but what can we control in our environment? And for me, that is just trying to have daily habits that keep me in good spirits. That's exercise, that's walking when the weather's nice, that's some meditation every day, things that I'm working into my life that I don't know whether I call it toughness, but it helps me feel resilient that as things come up, I can cope with what's next.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There was, and you're absolutely right, Jody. It is resilience, and toughness, resilience are kind of in that same thing. I love this quote. It says, resilience is accepting your new reality, even if it's less good than the one you had before. And isn't that it? It is kind of what I'm hearing from both of you. This is my here and now. I'm accepting here and now, and then I'm pivoting, or I'm having those healthy habits, Jody, to keep me moving forward, rather being stuck in that trial. Because I think that's a big thing, especially with our clients, is you do have a choice. You can choose toughness, resilience, or you can choose to be paralyzed by the trial. It's a choice. It's sometimes we're thrust into things we don't have a choice over, but we do have a choice over our reaction with that. So with both of you, I would love to hear about a time that you really toughed something out. So that's question number one, where your toughness, your resilience was in. But then also, what were those key ingredients that you learned out of that scenario that you can apply to future or now, those qualities of your resilience or your toughness? I'd love to hear from you on that.
I'm going to let Jody go first on this one.
Oh, wow.
On the spot.
I was waiting on
shake
you.
things
Mitch.
up.
Shaking
I like
it up,
to shake things up.
Shake it up. Yeah. I think the most recent example for me was actually very personal. In 2014, my father was injured in an accident that just one of these things that you couldn't imagine happened, but it was an injury that landed him in the hospital in intensive care and ultimately led to his death. So the resilience or toughness for me was having to work through that. I'm the oldest of 6 siblings, and my parents are divorced, and his second wife is not real keen on our being involved, even really being at the hospital. So having to try to forge some sort of relationship with her during that time, so that we could communicate and be there as we could. It was a challenging situation for all of us, but what served me was was trying to let go of judgment of her and let go of judgment of the situation and just be there and focus on my dad while he was living, and then afterwards what needed to happen, in those times. So it was
Yeah. What would you say is your key ingredient or your key qualities that you could pull out of that scenario that you utilize today to keep you moving forward?
Patience.
I don't like, they say pray for patience. I don't do that one.
That's not Piper's strong suit.
It's not.
I don't know what I discovered though, out of that was I could not, because I didn't have control of the situation. Yeah. I could not make the calls. I could not, do things the way I would have liked them to be done. And I had to just give into that. So it was maybe patience, but acceptance of the situation.
That's huge.
And just knowing that the unknown that was before me those things would come to me as I needed them to.
Yeah. I love that. I'm writing those down because I think we're going to have a good grouping of qualities here. Patience and acceptance. Those are big ones. So what about you, Mitch?
Well, I was homeless in LA at one point.
Wow.
By a crazy turn of events, I had to overnight get out of a place that I was renting. And I, at the time, was playing with my band in LA, and I was working as a lead server in a restaurant, and really didn't have any money set aside, nothing in savings, and really not enough to even go get an apartment. So I found myself panicking, couch surfing, living out of a little storage unit where I'd go and get change clothes, and then find whose couch I was going to sleep on that day. And it's funny that you talked about pivoting, because I found, and now I've it's part of a keynote speech that I give, where I've coined it La Volta. And the Volta is an old dance, but I kept my vision. Like, what is my vision? And for one thing was, I never wanted to be in that situation again. And I had been offered the opportunity, which is the O, the opportunity to go into a really great restaurant management program. And I kept turning it down because I was like, I'm doing the music thing. And finally I said, I think I can always do my music, but this is a great opportunity. And so I had the vision of like, this is never going to happen to me again. I'm going to have money in the bank. I'm going to have security. The opportunity came and I said, yes, I will go into this. I leaned on resources, which is the L in my Volta. And I had these amazing friends that came out and just helped, whether it was with couches, whether it was one of my friends loaned me the money, no questions asked. Wow. To go get an apartment and said, you pay me when you can. I know you're going through your training now, so you'll be able to pay me, which I did quickly. And then the T is for taking the time to make a plan, because I really sat down and made a plan of how I was going to change things, how I was going to pivot. Yeah. And the A in my Volta is my favorite, and that's your adversity is your advantage. How do you find the advantage in the adversity? And I think it's very fitting for this time right now where people are getting very creative with the time at home, or they're finding that the advantage is that they get to spend more time with their kids that they really hadn't, delved into, like, oh, is this what you're learning in school? Or, I picked up a guitar I hadn't picked up in a long time, and I'm finding pleasure again in creating music. Yeah. So the Volta, keep your vision, look for the opportunities, lean on your resources because they're there. And especially in times like this, there's a lot more resources, I think, than we even recognize. Yeah. Taking time to make a plan is important, and then find the advantage in the adversity. Yeah. That's what has gotten me through all my tough pivoting moments in life.
I love that. And if both of you, it sounds like you're very keenly aware of the situations where you've had to practice resilience and toughness. And then you've also taken the time to reflect on that and what were my qualities, what were my strengths during this time, and using that as an anchor moving throughout life. Would you guys agree with that? That's something that you're applying throughout other, seasons of life? That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, part of what I do in my practice is really focus on people's strengths. And I think that's so key to really know what your strengths are. Mm-hmm. So I think so many of us, we know intuitively what we're good at and what we're not, but we may not realize that the thing that is, like, for me, it's like kindness. I mean, but being that and leaning into that can really have benefits to people right now. I mean, it's just giving something that they're not getting elsewhere, right? And if you know what those are, you can use those to your advantage. A lot of people take for granted the strengths they have because they come so easily.
Right. What would you say then, and I completely agree, what would you say then to individuals that they're so paralyzed by the trial, they're so overwhelmed, they're so entrenched in the fear and anxiety, so they can't see their strengths. They don't know how to find their strengths and apply those. What would you all advise them to do? How would you coach them through finding those strengths and utilizing them?
There's a great free survey, VIA Strengths Survey, VIA.org. It's wonderful. Takes about 20 minutes to do it, and you get a list of your strengths, and it just breaks them down. And I use that with all my clients. I ask them to do that before our discovery session, so we have a starting point.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's a good way to. And now that we have a little more time, it's an opportunity to invest in yourself,
yes.
and discover a little bit more, or make a plan, whether it's a plan for how you're going to pay bills next month, coming up with a plan A budget and a plan B budget as things change, whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say, Mitch?
I would ask for moments in which they bested a situation and have them actually kinesthetically almost, remember, recall what got you through that, sort of like what you're doing right now. But also, I have them write down, because I think writing it works a different part of your mind, and I have them write down a list of their strengths. And it's funny, once they sit down to write how things, and I say, just keep writing, even you think that there's nothing else, keep writing, and they'll come up with things like, oh, and then there's the list, it's in front of you, it's on paper, it's facing you,
it's right there. It's right there. It's funny with this conversation, I was thinking about resilience and a time I've been through, and actually it brought me back to a time a client went through, and I'd love to share that with you guys. It's the same that you're talking about. This was years ago when I was a mental health counselor, and I had this little girl. She was a little girl then, because I was focused on adolescent psychology, and she was in and out of, it didn't matter if I was in the psychiatric unit or multiple different homes, group homes, she was there. And I fell in love with her. She just became mine. And so I watched her for years just struggle. Mom was a prostitute. Dad died of a heroin overdose. She was in and out. She had pyromania. She had any other mental health illness that you could imagine. It was just pretty heartbreaking. And I just never thought I could get to her. I just how can I help her? How can I help her? And I couldn't find her resilience at the time. But as I reflect back on who she was, the fact that she was in and out of homes showed that she was resilient. She just didn't stay on the street and die. And so years after I had stopped being a mental health counselor, I was at a special event. And part of my practice with these kids, and it's the same thing you're saying, is reflecting, writing things down to remember those times of resilience. I used to do this thing with her. We're in a group home. We have no money. We're a nonprofit. And I would go run down into the kitchen and I would grab a coffee filter for her. And I would say, okay, we're going to filter your thoughts. This is a kid. How do we filter your thoughts? These things that are telling you that you're a loser, you're never going to get out. And what are the things that are saying you can't? And so she had a coffee filter, and we would write on coffee filters. And that was just our thing. So years later, fast forward, I'm at an event. I haven't seen her. I don't know if she's alive. I don't know what's going on. And this little girl, I shouldn't say little girl at this point, but that's how she is in my heart, walked up to me and she smiled. And I kind of looked at her like, she looks familiar, but I didn't think anything of it because I had to go speak. Come back out. She comes back up to me, pulls out of her purse a coffee filter. And it's my girl.
Gosh.
Yes. And what was so amazing to me was I saw her resilience. Those things that we had written on that coffee filter, she focused on the resilience rather than focusing on the trial, rather than focusing on, I'm homeless, I'm on the street, I'm shooting heroin between my toes, which I found her doing, all these awful things. She focused on, okay, I'm surviving. I'm surpassing my mom and my dad. And, so what was really, and I have goosebumps thinking about her, that resilience is, again, that focusing on what are our strengths? And even in the moment, if you don't know that you're kind, or you don't know that you're strategic, those words for, your strengths, I'm just doing it. Right. I'm just one foot in front of the other. That's resilience, So that was something that I was thinking about when I was thinking resilience. What are those attributes, and I think that those key qualities are so important.
That's such a beautiful story.
Isn't it awesome?
Such a beautiful
because you don't
testament.
hear it, right? You just don't hear stories, especially as a counselor. You don't usually get to see where your clients end up. So I hold that one very, very tightly.
Yeah.
So guys, what would you say when someone says to you, toughness or resilience? Is it inherited or is it practice? We're kind of doing a nature versus nurture thing here, right? So what is it?
That's a very good question. And it's one that I go back and forth on a lot. And I think there can be a little bit of both, as with most things, because I remember going through a lot of hardships as a child, and I was always resilient. And then I saw others, family members, go through the same thing and not deal with it the same way. So I just thought, well, there's just something different about me, or there's just something different about her or him. But I do think that you can also teach and nurture somebody who's not naturally as maybe tough or resilient. I think you can teach them, and something Jody said really stuck with me, habits. At least habits. If you have some good, strong habits to lean on, I think it is helpful. So I think there's a little bit of both.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree. You know, it's funny because when I was thinking about this question, aren't we resilient when we're kids and we're learning to walk?
Mm.
Right. So are we born with resilience? We keep trying, you know, or is it a lack of fear? I don't know. What do you think, Jody?
Yeah, I don't think you have that that saboteur voice in your head when you're 2 years old. You know, it
Ah,
hasn't been developed yet.
Yeah.
You haven't had anyone tell you you can't do something, so you just do it. You know, as we get older, that voice gets pretty loud for most of us in one aspect of our lives or another. And how to know, I think, when to recognize that voice and send it to the corner or wherever. I that's another thing I like to work with my clients on, is just being aware where it's showing up, when is it coming up. That's the first key, and being able to, I don't want to say tame it. I don't think it ever goes away, but it's a way to get it to just recognize it for what it is, and say, I'm going to do this anyway.
Yeah.
Because my life is, what I have at stake is too important.
Mm-hmm.
and those build defining moments. That's a really great point, Jody. And I'm thinking of a client of mine right now that we're coaching confidence. And you say, well, how can you coach confidence? It's defining moments and saying, okay, well, this is an opportunity for you to practice being resilient or being confident, or requesting something that you normally wouldn't. And then when it works out, being able to say, you see,
Mm-hmm.
it worked, you did it, it's a defining moment. So highlighting those defining moments is helpful as well, I think, in coaching resilience.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that this has turned into talking about how we coach our clients, you know, because it's great, because I think it's really important for people to hear, how does this process work? How do we develop these things in people? So as a coach, here's a question for you guys. As a coach, how do you coach yourselves when you are up against a trial and you can tell that toughness is waning? How do you coach yourself?
Good question.
I'm full of them today.
Ah. But we didn't hear, Piper, if you think nurture nature.
I think it's both. I think it's both. I think that we are all born with a giftedness. I think that's my poema. Everybody's born as a workmanship, as a masterpiece. And so I believe that we are born with these abilities. But again, life hits us, fear and all of these upsets. And so we forget that we were born gifted. We're born with our strengths. We're born with these strengths. And so I think it's also, you have to practice it. So I think you're born with it, but you have to practice it. It's like any other muscle, right? If we don't use our muscles, we lose our strength. And I think it's the same thing with it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So how do you guys overcome obstacles when it comes to your resilience is waning? Like, we've heard about habits, we've heard about, you know, the Volta, but as a coach, and I'll just say for me, it's pretty darn hard for me to set my pride aside and say, I need help. And to practice what I have my clients do. You know, it's hard. It's hard to do that. Do you guys face that, or is that just me?
No, that is absolutely me. As a matter of fact, I got together with one of my peers that went through coaching training with me, and we're establishing a weekly meeting to be accountability partners for each other.
That's
because this website needs to be done, and I've been dragging my feet. So, you know, there are things that I'm putting in place to help, because I am just like anyone else. I'm not immune to fear or to, you know, judging myself, whatever. All those things come up for all of us. And, you know, I know how to help others, but it's a different, you just need a different perspective when you're, you know, when you're going through these things. And so having someone to work with you is and measurable.
Yeah. Perspective. I love that perspective. We need another's perspective to pull us out. Right. Yeah. What about you, Mitch?
I second that and add to it that you need space. You know, it's why you don't self-counsel or it's why I have a coach that I go to and say, yes, I know everything that's wrong with me. I know everything that's wrong with me, but I'm going to bounce this off of you. And then it puts space between me and the problem.
Yes.
It puts it over there with like a battery. You have a negative and a positive, and you need both. One doesn't power it up by itself. You need both, right? So having that space and being able to step outside and even have another person that it bounces off of, whether they're just saying, yeah, that sucks, just a really good acknowledgement, and you go, oh, okay, sometimes that's all you need. Or sometimes it's asking a powerful question. And that's why coaching is so powerful, because we ask powerful questions that then get you to go, oh, that creates the shift, the viewpoint shift, that you go, oh, I didn't look at it that way. Because you're so in your head, you can't get space from the problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have a coach. That's how I handle it.
Yep. We all have to have them. For me, you know, the biggest thing for me, because I do know that my pride gets in the way, is I have built a team. So whether it's a coach, my best friend, they know when they see those Piper-isms come out, or like I stop answering the phone or whatever it is, I become a hermit a lot of times when I feel overwhelmed. So I've built that community around me to call me out on it and say, okay, let's go. So I've had to build those relationships, that community, which is so key right now, right? With this toughness, we can't, and I think that's a big thing. None of us, what we're all saying, none of us can practice toughness and resilience all the time
alone,
all by ourselves.
No.
We just can't. I mean, that's why community, especially now through COVID, is so dang important. You can't practice resilience and keep going and keep going and keep going if you don't have anybody else saying keep going, keep going, keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's so, well, I would love to introduce you all to the C's of toughness, and Jody, you'll see this, we'll provide this to everybody that's watching. So this is just something kind of to help us think about practicing our resilience, or when we're feeling not so tough, when we're feeling pretty much like, you know, weak. So control, the first C is control. Find ways that you can control your environment. So whether that's just controlling your emotions, control them. Whether that's, you know, controlling that load of laundry that you haven't, you know, folded, there's control that can be found in a lot of different areas if the rest of your world around you is out of control. So the first C is control.
And that's a good point, Piper. I just want to say that sometimes just cleaning, like physical work that gets you out of your head, gives you some control, and it really is therapeutic.
Absolutely. That's my workouts in the morning. I don't want to, and I can tell you guys today was a tough resilience day for me, and the treadmill wouldn't work, and I was just like ready to die. I'm like, stop it, Piper. You know, and I just put in my earphones and I went for a run outside. I'm like, hopefully the neighbors don't get mad at me for being outside, you know, but it's to control the things that I can control and stop focusing on the things that I can't control, like we talked about earlier. The second C is confidence or competence. Reflect on those times where we've been faced with a situation that are especially tough, and focus on how we got through it, and focus on, hey, I did do it. I can apply that here. So focusing on that, again, going back and reflecting is so powerful. The third C is cope. So this is a big one I want us all to talk about. Developing positive coping strategies. Positive is the key word, because we all
not
have
like 2 bottles of wine. Right?
We all have negative coping strategies. All of us have those. So developing those positive coping strategies. We already talked about habits. We've talked about, you know, controlling, like cleaning. What are some other positive coping strategies or habits that we can help anybody listening today? What are some other ones you think that would be beneficial to them?
Oh, I think it's finding something that brings you joy, whether it's music or, you know, maybe it is a movie, but it's something that, you know, being outside in the sunshine because you have an opportunity to do that. You know, of course, not in a public place where lots of people are.
6
But,
feet apart.
You know, yeah, you know,
Right.
maintain your distance, but be smart about it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, take a walk in your neighborhood if you can, and you know, enjoy conversations with family and friends. That
Yes.
call somebody that you haven't talked to in a while. Check in with them.
Yeah. Isn't that odd how this has done that? I'm talking to people from grade school, middle school.
Mm.
Yes. Yes.
I'm finally slowed down and connecting. You know, it's a positive.
That's
out of it.
key.
Mhm.
What you just said is so key. I finally slowed down
Right.
so that I'm connecting.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge advantage to this adversity is I think a lot of people are finally slowing down to truly connect. And that's a beautiful thing in a world where everybody is like this with
Yeah.
their screens and nobody's really talking to each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I
And
think too. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jody.
I was just going to say, my hope for the outcome of all of this is that it does bring us all closer together, and you know, pulls us closer together, and globally,
Yes.
honestly.
I agree. I agree. And I love what both of you are talking, especially Jody, we were saying, you know, go outside, these positive coping strategies. You can even use prompts. If you're just so stuck, you know, okay, the color blue, think of a prompt, anything to get your, like finding that joy, finding that something that's a positive coping strategy rather than focusing over here on the things, the trial that you can't control. What are some positive coping strategies? So definitely reflection, that sort of thing, using prompts to help you through that, connecting with family and friends, your music, cooking. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily positive right now because I'm eating a lot more.
But I will say that my eating out budget has gone down by a lot, and my husband and I are finding creative ways to, you know, creative things in the kitchen that we wouldn't have done before, and now we're like, oh, we'll save a lot more money in future.
Right.
Whatever makes you happy.
Exactly. Whatever makes you happy. I love that. The fourth C is character. And this is, we've already touched on this. What are our strengths? Digging deeply into our values, and those gifts that we have, and really saying to ourselves, okay, I know I have this gift of, like, one of my strengths is definitely strategic, which is a blessing and a curse because I'm finding I can't be as strategic as I like to be right now. So now I have to pivot my strategy and say, okay, now where's it, you know, going to go? But deeply defining those values and those strengths, you know, digging into our character and applying that moving forward for toughness. And the last one is contribution, meaning get out of your own way, stop thinking about yourself and go help somebody else. That is one of the surest ways to break free of the trial, you know, and to build that toughness. You guys have anything you want to add to the C's that I came up with?
Contribution is huge, and contribution reminds us that we are a lot luckier than you know, it gives us gratitude. And I think there is big therapy in gratitude. I wake up every morning and try to make my mental list of these are the things I'm grateful for. If I'm in a bad mood, which will happen in tight quarters sometimes, I will stop and try to think of things. I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful. And I do my list of gratitudes and I suddenly become a little bit lighter. And so contribution helps with that big inflow of gratitude, because if you know, wow, I can buy a grocery gift card for $100 and give it to this person that I know is not working right now. And I'm so grateful that I can do that, or whatever it is that we can help with.
Yeah, I think finding something. My son and I volunteered at a local food pantry last week, and you know, just assembling bags of food, and then we went back Friday and passed them out as people came up. So whatever little bit you can do, you know, in your community or a family member that, you know, needs assistance, if you're able, find a way to make what difference you can.
Absolutely.
Yeah, giving back is a sure way to get out of that trial, right? Get out of that paralyzation. So wrapping up today, I want to hear from both of you. What is the biggest piece of advice you can give someone right now that is absolutely paralyzed with fear and anxiety during this COVID crisis? What can you leave them with today to help them through this? Because we're all there with them, right? So what would you say to them? Thinking about it.
Well, Piper, I will say first that I'm grateful for you, my friend, and for thinking up such a wonderful series like this. I think this, what you are doing is very helpful in times when people are struggling to find their footing. So thank you. I think this is huge, and I hope a lot of people will, at least they'll watch the recording and get some things out of it.
Yes.
And my advice, I think we've pretty much touched on it all here. If I had to wrap it all up, it is you can only control what you can control. Find what that is in the moment. Find something that gives you joy in the moment. And know, if you're a person of faith, whatever faith that is, that this too shall pass.
Yeah.
And hopefully when it does, we will be better for it in some way.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. What about you, Jody? What would you say?
Yeah, I think it's looking for that that element that brings you joy, that brings a sense of the good things that are in your life, and reflecting on what those are. Keeping maybe a daily list of what are 3 good things that happened today, and it may be little things, but what are those? Just so your focus is more on what is positive in your life, because it's easier to get overwhelmed about. I think for most of it's the uncertainty. Look at the stock market and the volatile swings of that, and I've just got to put that aside right now because that doesn't serve me to be. So find what serves you and how it serves you, and be mindful of that. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
That it is. And I would wrap it up by saying you're not alone.
Yeah.
You're
Absolutely.
just, we are a global community, and whether you're at home in an apartment by yourself or you're surrounded by children and husbands that are driving you crazy like I am, you're not alone. You're not alone in this. And that's why we've chosen the profession of coaching. And that's why we're doing these Lunch and Learn series, because we do care and we don't want you to ever feel alone. You're 100% not alone. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. And to close it out, I do want to let everybody know that there is a free workbook that we have put together for you based on toughness. And this is just going to be an option for you to reflect and to continue to grow on building your toughness, building your resilience. We will make sure we're going to have links on our websites. You can head over to Mitch's website, which is savehillconsulting.com. Jody, I will send you a link as well. So we'll send it over to you as well. This is a downloadable PDF, a workbook. So feel free, share it with others. We want you to continue to grow in your toughness and resilience. So thanks everybody for joining us today. And we'll see you next week for another installment of our Lunch and Learn through Poema Women's Success Coaching.
Thank you, Piper.